The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
And we're delighted to have you listening to America's Web Radio. We're happy that you decided to tune in tonight because this is a very special edition of the Terry Lakin Action Fund Radio Hour. It has been America's Web Radio's privilege to broadcast the shows, and as a veteran, I feel I've been able to do just a little bit to help by broadcasting the shows. And in my book, we've been helping a hero, a very distinguished officer. Additionally, I'd like to thank the Action Fund for letting us broadcast the first interview with Dr. Lakin. And now, it is again my privilege and welcome Dr. Terry Lakin and Dr. Greg Lakin to America's Web Radio.
Thank you, David, and good evening, and thank you for those of you who have tuned in tonight over the web to listen to this last regular show of this series, and we don't know where we're going to go from here, but tonight the Terry Lakin Action Fund is very pleased to have the subject of the fund, Lieutenant Colonel Terry Lakin and his brother, Dr. Greg Lakin. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco.
Many of you listening certainly know Terry's story, that he chose to knowingly disobey a direct order to deploy with the hope that he could get some of the facts he had been seeking so diligently for 2 years, and of course was sent to Leavenworth for 5 months. And so the part of the story that no one's heard to this day is Terry's ordeal, the time he was convicted and taken to prison, and then a little bit about his first experiences. So we want to cover that tonight and then talk about some of the extraordinarily positive experiences he had in prison, and lastly close with a little bit about where he's going to be heading in the future. So let's begin with that night. Greg, why don't you tell us a little about your experience watching the trial as it came to Terry's conviction?
Well, it was certainly very frustrating for me and his family. I have experience as a litigator, but never in a military tribunal, and so for me it was just a whole different set of rules and regulations that in some ways seem so unfair to me. I've never seen a case where a defendant was prohibited from presenting a defense, any kind of defense on his own behalf. During 2 pretrial motions, he was prohibited from mentioning anything about his reasons for doing what he did, why he did what he did, his futility in trying to use lesser means to solve the issue and solve the problem, and the principles and really behind the decision he made. And so none of that could be brought up in his defense, and so he really had no defense. He pled guilty and then had to wait for sentencing that immediately followed to even tell his story. So I've never seen anything like that, and of course it was very frustrating for those of us that know Terry and know what he stands for.
So Terry, you went through this, the conviction came down, and you disappeared for almost 9 or 10 days, right? So what happened from that minute they took you from the courtroom? Oh, next step.
Well, I was allowed about 20 minutes with my mother and father and brothers that were there, and just in preparation of my movement on to some confinement facility. We had a tearful and goodbye, but they left after 20 minutes, and the unit representatives were there to take me into custody, and pretty much immediately had me change into my ACU uniform and take my rank off and proceed to shackle me with chains at the ankle and a leather waistband that was handcuffed to my waistband. And from there, they loaded me into a van and took me to Walter Reed Provost Marshal office. The snow had started then. It was pretty cold that night, and kind of some bad memories I just have not thought about since then. But they placed, after a strip search and searching my belongings, they placed me in a cell that hadn't been used very much and was pretty dark and cold throughout the night. And, the next morning, I did voice voice that I didn't want to spend another night of freezing cold like that, and they proceeded to get the little space heater, and they attempted to work on the ventilation system there and get the heat started in this little dark corner of a cell that they had. But I was really not told much of anything except they were trying to arrange my transfer to another facility, and that may take 2 or 3 days. And later that next afternoon, things really progressed fast. They already had a flight arranged out to Kansas City and essentially loaded me in the van, had me at Reagan International Airport, walking through the lines there, shackled at the ankles and handcuffed and waiting for the flight, and took me on board the airline flight to Kansas City. And we arrived out here at Kansas City close to midnight, and I was taken into the Joint Regional Custody Facility here at Fort Leavenworth a little after midnight the next day. The facility there was only several months after its grand opening, I guess, and they have a process where they take new inmates into a transitional section, a special housing unit, where I was essentially housed in an isolated cell for 22 to 23 hours a day. We were allowed to get out once or twice for an hour at a time, sometimes 2 hours at a time if we were on detail cleaning some other cells. And I did get to interact with 2 or 3 other inmates that had just arrived, playing cards and watching a little TV, essentially for that hour or two that we were outside or in the common area. But since it was the holidays, things were slow on in processing, and we ended up spending 19 days in that little transitional facility before being allowed to go out into the general population medium security facility.
Now, when you first went in, you explained to me you had all this in-processing classes, and I said, this is almost like a deployment. You said it is. But tell us a little bit about what was that they were teaching you, and what it would seem more like this you'd go into prison. They were like prison school, right?
Yes, that was the kind of 5 half days of instruction that they had to arrange, and during their holiday schedule, they had trouble arranging that. So that was our delay. But instructions from every section of the facility, like chaplain came and talked to us and told us their resources. Library came and told us about their resources. Certainly there was quite a few classes on the rules and regulations, and we were handed the regulation manual to essentially that was our only reading material that we had, other than letters and a Bible. And we had to know that rule book in detail, and we were held responsible for that as soon as we received that. Certainly they have all the rules that they need to maintain custody and control of us, and other in-processing duty functions they did for us was fingerprint again, and
scriptures.
Yes. And they come through and do head count on a regular basis, and essentially have to come through and look at everybody in the cell and make sure that they're okay every 20 minutes, 24 hours a day.
During the in-processing, right?
Yes, during those 19 days in the kind of the isolated unit.
So how did that conclude? Because that was a long time.
Well, yeah, several of us, all the new people were concerned that we would at least get out and start our detail job to earn our 1 day per month of abatement time. So we pushed for that, and I think the facility understood that too, and they did get us out, assigned to a job, and assigned to the general population shortly after the New Year's.
So it felt good to get out of prison into prison, is what you're saying?
Well, yes, put into a pod with several inmates. I think there was probably 40 people in our pod, and assigned to a roommate and sharing a cell with 2 bunks, and little bit more freedom, though. You have a bigger common area and more people to interact with, and able to watch TV at least.
Interesting. So we'll come back to this. So, Greg, so now Terry's been gone. We didn't know where he was for 19 days. So what's going on in your family's mind? What was happening with you? Because Peely did not see him before he left, actually. So,
right.
So what was going on with your family, your parents, Peely?
Well, and this is something that, was new to me also, but in military tribunal, once there's a conviction, it goes straight to sentencing, and then it's straight to incarceration. So nobody really knew where he was going to be transported, nor could they give us any real indicators on where it might be. He basically just disappeared for a while, and we wanted to make preparations to see him and be wherever he was going to go, and finally he resurfaced and was able to they let him communicate with his immediate family, but there was a lot of confusion, at least on our part anyway.
So what was that first communication like? I guess you were able to call Peely, that's correct?
Actually, I did leave out a part. Before they did transfer me to the airport, they did take me to our company headquarters, and were able to have Peely and the kids come in and say goodbye to me at that time. But it was it seemed like a special favor that I had to ask to have them unshackle me and at least allow me to say goodbye to the kids and Peely for that initial time without handcuffs on. And then from there, we went straight to the airport.
Interesting. You indicated walking through the airport in shackles was an interesting experience. So
again, something I'm trying to forget, but it's to go from one day, serving your country and helping out soldiers at a medical clinic, and the next day you're escorted through an airport in public with two guards on either side of you and a higher ranking officer leading the way and going through the public process of an airport that way is your spectacle.
She had 3 soldiers with you.
Yes.
Interesting. So, Greg, he's gone off. What were some of your personal thoughts in those first few days?
Well, my personal thoughts are, and I understand that the military really didn't know what to do with the situation. I mean, basically, this was a case concerning a very important principle, a principle that was very important to this country, and really anybody that knows Terry knows that it was based on principles and virtue, really. So once you know that, there really his motives can't be questioned. And so, in my mind, he certainly deserved better. It's unfortunate that that the issue could not be resolved in a more timely manner or in a more he deserved better, and justice was not served that day, in my opinion. And so here's a brother that that I grew up with, that all he wanted to do was be in the military, in the Army, and he still believes in the Army and believes in his country, but to be marched away like that was certainly very demeaning and probably unwarranted in my opinion. I understand they have their procedures that they just follow, so but it was still painful to witness.
No, I can imagine. So, we're going to go ahead and take a short station break here. When we come back, we're going to hear about Terry, your first few days on the pod, and some of the significant things that happened, including the letters and various people who communicated with you. So, let's hand it back to Radio Sandy Springs for a quick break.
And we thank all of you for listening to this special edition of the Terry Lakin Action Fund and the first interview with Dr. Lakin. We'll be back right after this.
With all the back and forth in today's politics, it seems as though the Constitution gets lost in the mix. If you want to brush up on your Constitution, then join Michael Conley every Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. for the show Our Constitution on americaswebradio.com.
Did you miss a show that you really wanted to hear? All of our programs are available for download on americaswebradio.com and on iTunes. You can listen to your favorite programs on americaswebradio.com anytime you like.
And again, we want to thank everyone for listening to this special edition of the Terry Lakin Action Fund Radio Hour. We want to thank Marco for all he's done with us and for us throughout the past few months. And Marco, I know I had mentioned to you that I wasn't going to say much. I'm not going to say more than that. This is really the start. And I know my family is going to keep Dr. Lakin in our prayers, and I ask the audience to do the same thing, and I don't mean to be taking any of your thing away, Marco, but I'm sure you're going to keep everybody posted on the website. And I ask the audience that's listening to stay abreast of what's going on. Check into the Terry Lakin Action Fund website often. And at this point, I'm going to give it back to you, Marco.
Welcome back. So in this first segment, we heard a little bit about Terry's ordeal from the final sentencing to arriving at Leavenworth. So this next time, I'm going to talk a little about his first experiences on the pod and what that felt like, smelled like, sounded like, and then touch on some of the really extraordinary letters and packages he received. So Terry, you get there, right? You finally get out of the now you're in your real pod. So tell us what that was like, because you said earlier nothing's farther than 40 feet away. We can't relate to that. So what was going on there?
It's a rather large facility and just made of all concrete, concrete walls, concrete hallways. To get transferred, you pack up all your stuff in a plastic tough box, and they proceed to move you into the general population. And when you enter into a larger general population pod, it's 30 to 40 guys that watching 3 new guys come in, and you're the new fish. Certainly, you're kind of the focus of attention at that point, and there's a little name calling or jeering or just you could expect that with new people coming in. And there was a couple guys that came in with me, and they were assigned to one cell, and then there was actually a single cell that I was initially assigned to, but within 15 minutes, the sergeant in charge of the cell switched me over to another cell with a roommate, and I went up and introduced myself when he pointed out my roommate, and the initial reaction was, oh hell no, and but we made the best of the situation, and we became very close friends.
You got so close that when they asked to move you to light security, you didn't want to leave, right?
Exactly. There's got along very well and became close friends. There's several other people that I met, and there's just a group of individuals that have been trained as soldiers and very sharp, intelligent people that are incarcerated, and I think that there's some valued talent there that is essentially just going to waste.
So tell us about your cell. You drew a picture, but you said not to scale. So what was it like?
It's 14 shoe lengths by 8 shoe lengths. So I'm guesstimating that's about a 14 by 7 cell with a door, that big metal door that slams shut and locks, and once you're in, you're not getting out. There is a multi-function sink that functions as our sink and toilet and toilet paper dispenser, I guess. There's 2 bunks. The ladder up to the top bunk is using the the chair and the desk that are, all these are metal built into the walls. And you have a mattress and 2 lockers. And it's tight quarters for when the door closes at 10 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning, and you make the best of it.
You said they inspect it. You have to keep it really tidy, right?
Yes, you do.
Because I think I said, aren't you looking forward to being able to leave your socks on the floor at night, right?
Yes. You do have minimal stuff that they issue to you, and you keep that neat and orderly, but you can count on every few days a guard will come through and go through things as much as he deems necessary.
So then you started getting letters.
I actually started getting letters when I was in the transitional special housing unit. Right before Christmas. Letters, 10, sometimes 20, even 30 letters a day would come in. People sending me Christmas cards and well wishes and prayers, and incredibly, several of these letters just very touching, and would make anybody tear up. Several, a lot of good people out there that were sharing and sending, and
was this unusual to get this many letters?
It does make you feel guilty when several inmates don't receive letters for months, for weeks, and I had several a day, and or 10, 20, 30 a day. Even some people trying to send me stamps or self-addressed envelopes or small booklets that all get taken out. They don't allow that to come through, but several people learned that they could send me books if they came from the publisher, and I received a handful of wonderful books that people wanted me to read, and I read most of them, and I kind of turned this 5 months into a good reading retreat.
Now, some of the people who wrote to you have become good friends and frequent encouragers. Tell us about some of those folks' first names.
Well, there's a wonderful retired couple that lived nearby, and there was one of the first letters to me saying they would come visit me anytime, and would extend any kind of help to my family when they came to visit. And several months ago, they started visiting, about 3 months ago, and the gentleman was just a incredible, uplifting spirit. Came and visited me 2, sometimes 3 nights a week. It's just nice to hear from somebody on the outside every now and then, in person, other than our phone system that we had there.
Yeah. And in fact, so at least 2 people have stayed with them, and they were phenomenal hosts, and are part of a larger ministry to prisons in general through their motorcycle club. So it was kind of neat. And we're going to some other folks. I know we just spoke to someone on the phone from Connecticut who's been corresponding with you regularly, right? The Congresswoman, a few others, right?
Yes. There's somebody that's running for Congress, and just wrote me some wonderful letters and very uplifting. Had a little correspondence about our founding fathers and our Constitution. And another couple from the New York area that sent me an incredible card once a week or twice a week. Several people from Colorado sending me multiple letters, and it was very, very, very positive, and got me through this time too.
Made a difference.
Yeah.
We have a photo of Peely with about 4,000 letters on your kitchen counter that we haven't published. It's pretty amazing. So, Greg, you visited Terry during those first early weeks, right? A couple of times.
Right.
So tell us about your first impressions of seeing your brother there in prison.
Well, and I'm used to him being deployed, in Afghanistan or Bosnia or wherever, but, he's trained for that, and this is something, certainly new to him and new to us. So it was just a very ominous cold concrete, concertina wires strung out everywhere, and just quite a process to get through to even go see him. They let us select a few pass through security, and you have to be on the list. That being said, I will say that all the staff there was very professional, very well trained. It was just a high security, hardened prison. In my mind, he deserved better. But he made the best of it. And he made the best of us, and I got up there maybe every other week or so to talk to him.
And what were some of your first impressions when he was there in terms of his spirit?
Well, you pick up coping skills as it goes on, and it's just a completely foreign environment to somebody, in his position, or it's a different kind of fear, I think, that an inmate has and that he had. It's a lot of uncertainties. It's a lot of changes where you're watched at every second and told what to do on every little thing. Again, that's probably the way it is at all these facilities, but I'm sure it's very trying.
So Terry, you've been in a lot of highly disciplined situations. So what are some of the differences between that, being in a very intense military action and being in prison? Both highly disciplined, but different focus. So what were your struggles there?
Well, it's a new facility that had only been open for a few months before my arrival, and I think they were still settling in and trying to develop some programs, but there wasn't a lot for the inmates to do. We had our work detail, but besides a 1 hour indoor rec and 1 hour at outdoor rec and a library call for an hour if you didn't want to do the workouts, you were essentially either in your cell reading or sleeping or out in the pod watching TV. So there was a lack of a lot of variety of things to do, and it's a big change to go from being a person that can have input to things to all of a sudden being a name and a number, and no mister, no rank. You're just inmate. Inmate Lakin with a number, and that's the way you're treated. And there are reasons for that, but it's an adjustment that the inmates have to go through.
As Greg said, and we would concur, that everyone we dealt with at the prison was courteous and professional. Both Peely and myself, Greg, everyone we met, and that gives high marks to the system, and I really appreciate that. So we're going to go to a second break here in a second. When we come back, we want to address some of the problems that you saw and the very positive help that you were to the prison and their openness and willingness to allow you to do that, and then some of the really neat results that come out of that. So we're going to turn it back to Sandy Springs for a short break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Do facts matter? That's exactly what Robert D'Agostino and his guests discuss every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. on Do Facts Matter. You'll get the real story here on americaswebradio.com.
Did you miss a show that you really wanted to hear? All of our programs are available for download on americaswebradio.com and on iTunes. You can listen to your favorite programs on americaswebradio.com anytime you like.
This is americaswebradio.com, the best in chat radio designed just for you.
And now back to Marco and a very special edition of the Terry Lakin Action Fund Hour.
Yes, welcome back. In this third segment, we want to talk a little bit about the atmosphere of the prison, some of the challenges Terry observed, and some of the changes that were affected. But first, Greg, I think as you'll hear, you probably weren't surprised that Terry did this. Tell us a little about why that was the case, since you know him probably better than anyone.
Well, I was his older brother, but he had just a strong sense of fairness growing up as a child, and what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, and he certainly was not afraid to take a stand or address an inequity or injustice. And so, I wasn't surprised. And really, he's got a unique combination. He's very intelligent, of course. He's, a physician, but he's also a patriot, and he joined the Army to represent his country and to fight for his country, and he certainly isn't afraid of anything. If he didn't get accepted to med school, he was, fired up to be a ranger, and at the same time, he's very humanitarian, and he's a rescuer, like many healthcare professionals are. So, he'll always try to rescue, whether it's in the field of combat or whether it's a fellow prisoner or whether it's just a friend. I mean, he's going to try to make things better. And so, I think he did this out of a commitment and toward his country. And so, I wasn't surprised that he stood up to what is probably the most powerful man in the world and said, "Hey, you have to abide by the Constitution too, and it doesn't matter who you are." And so that's what he did.
So Terry, you get to prison at a new facility. Nobody's being untoward, they're just kind of operating. You start to see some real challenges there. So what were some of the things you observed right off the bat? I think you started with the operations, right?
Yeah, I believe all the inmates in there are trained to some degree, and actually most of them, the majority, were good soldiers, and were developing leaders and used to taking charge in situations or working hard and improving things, and I saw that a lot of them had been trying to improve things or get some programs started. Even my roommate was organizing little workout groups, and he had an incredible impact on 10 or maybe 15 inmates, and helped them lose weight and eat better and reduce their blood pressure by leading them on workouts during the indoor gym, and very positive influences there. There was several guys that were trying to help the dining facility improve the meal plan, and I could see that there was some resistance at first, and as time went on during my stay, I think several other people were working on other projects and trying to help the facility improve a number of programs, including the offering of educational programs. And I offered up myself to the education director there, and we were able to start a math class for some of the inmates, and that was the first class that they had taught in-house. I believe the 4 individuals that I helped through math class were great. They were enthusiastic. They had fun. Essentially just reviewing math skills, and improved greatly, and took the assessment test early and scored very well on it. Other members were great support to the chapel there. The chapel had a group of 7 to 8 individuals that had the choir and the band, and very talented musicians, and when I started going to our Protestant service there was probably 10 people attending every Sunday, and I think just the quality of the band and the choir, and again, my multi-talented roommate has an incredible solo voice, and people started hearing about that, and by the time I left, we had 35, 40 people attending the Protestant service on Sunday.
They don't take an offering, though, right?
No, there's nothing.
That's nothing to give. So you, at the end, they debriefed you, and you shared a lot of ideas. What are some of the things you think? Now, we remind people these people are in prison, so we're not asking for it to be a spa, but yet you felt there were a lot of good soldiers that really need an opportunity to prepare for their departure. What's some things you'd like to see done in the same vein going forward?
Well, I know it's difficult for the facility to weigh their resources and their ability to have programs, especially at a new facility just starting out. But there are some talented individuals that are incarcerated, and without them having some means of maintaining those skills or improving skills or learning other skills, it's an incredible waste of time for them. But the library offered some of that. Education Center was building up a program, and it would be nice if there was a lot more vocational education programs trying to give these soldiers, these good soldiers, a little bit of responsibility. They thrive on that. They want to make changes, but to have a program in the prison, it's difficult for them maybe with their staffing to arrange. I think they're headed in that direction. And I did notice a lot of good positive changes the last few months that I was there.
Now, you were the highest ranked soldier to come into the prison, correct?
Yes.
Of course, you didn't have that rank in prison.
No.
Right, and that seemed to give you a little bit more opportunity to talk to some of the folks there.
It did. The last few weeks, some of the people that were pod representatives and addressing concerns with the staff at their monthly or meetings every 2 weeks. Sometimes they would have a meeting and try and address concerns, and a few of them did come up and voice that your support here made things happen a little bit faster, or where they had been trying to get some kind of response, positive response, it wasn't happening, and I think my input may have helped them out a little bit. I do think the place is improving, and there's just some good soldiers in there that are trying to do good things still, even though they're inmates.
So on the website we have that graphic where you can rate Leavenworth that was on Google. So you would give it, 4 or 5 stars right now as a prison?
Improving.
So you kind of made your own courses, though, because you got involved. I think I asked you, what are you going to do now you're out? You don't have time to read. So what were some of the most significant books in your reading? I know you read a lot of government work, you read a lot of faith-based work, you read a lot of historical. So there are a couple of the books that really had a huge impact on you.
They assigned me to the library as my first work detail, and I think my initial first day there, I went in, and our responsibilities were to restock the shelves and monitor the library when they had a recreation call. But one of the books that was just misfiled on the shelf and had a pretty bright cover on it was The 5,000-Year Leap. And that had been a book that I'd heard about over the past year or two, and I dove into that, and I think I finished that in a few days and was reshelving that. And another book that looked brand new but had an interesting cover on it that looked pretty antique-like was On Democracy by Alex de Tocqueville. I enjoyed reading that book, and several other books along the way during the library detail, but then I got moved over to the chapel detail. And chapel detail, we had a media center that had probably 1,000 books that were Christian-based, but from there I started reading C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity, Screwtape Letters. I found several of Charles Colson's books that were just very hit home to me, and I valued the lessons that I learned from that. There was several of the other books that started making the rounds with the inmates in the past month were Lee Strobel's A Case for the Creator, A Case for Christ, and A Case for Faith. There was I think that was part of the revival going on in the church. Several people valuing their Christian beliefs and finding their faith of Christianity.
And then we sent you Chronicles of Narnia, and you wrote me back and said, "Why did you send those to me? I can't stop reading them." Right?
Yeah. It was a good diversion, but I thought that I should be reading a little bit more other adult books, but those were great books.
And then we sent you a copy of a textbook, The Bible and Its Influence, that really made it around the prison too, right?
It did. I didn't want to let it out of my hands, but I did show people that, and certainly the friends that were on the chapel detail with me really liked the book, and hope to send them a copy or two. And, the chapel detail was very interesting. There was 4 other guys, and we did our duties, but just throughout the day we kind of do an ongoing Bible study, or any questions that we had. If somebody else didn't know the answer, we'd have all the resources, the commentaries or apologetic books that we could look things up. The latest book that I'm reading right now is Christianity and the Constitution, and I'm only about a third of the way through, but I'm just astonished at how grounded our founding fathers were in their Christian beliefs, and I think that they integrated that and expected that to continue with the Constitution. And somewhere along the line during my education, I missed that. I think we've forgotten about that with our history.
So you become even more convinced of the need for us to maintain constitutional law, correct? You've read a lot about that.
Absolutely, and along with religious values that are integral to maintaining that.
Very interesting. So, Greg, you tracked with Terry during this whole last 5 months, and you saw him get involved in a number of these programs. So what were some of your responses to the things that did, particularly educational?
Right. No, I mean, he really delved in even more to, the founding fathers and their beliefs and the Constitution and why it was drafted the way it was, and their beliefs with regard to religions and life purpose, and he did a lot of soul searching, like anyone would in that situation, and I'm sure he's come out stronger because of it. And certainly it's good to have him back. I tell you, it was great to get him up.
Since both of you were crying, but we won't tell anyone that. You didn't hear that radio audience.
Thanks, Mark.
So, Terry, during the last couple minutes of the segment, what communications did you have with your family during this last 5 months? Switch to Peely and...
My wife is just an incredible lady to put up with previous deployments and this separation. And for her to, take care of the kids the way that she did, with without any help from me. And this is even worse than a deployment, I think, because the communication was even not as good as what I've had on previous deployments. But she's an incredible lady, and incredible neighbors that helped her out, and incredible friends. It's truly touching.
Yeah, it definitely was interesting. Well, we're going to come up on our last break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Terry about what the future holds, answer some of the questions many of you have asked about his next few weeks and months. So we're going to send it back to America's Web Radio. David, sorry, he's calling Sandy Springs for a short break.
With all the back and forth in today's politics, it seems as though the Constitution gets lost in the mix. If you want to brush up on your Constitution, then join Michael Conley every Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. for the show Our Constitution on americaswebradio.com.
Did you miss a show that you really wanted to hear? All of our programs are available for download on americaswebradio.com and on iTunes. You can listen to your favorite programs on americaswebradio.com anytime you like.
Do Facts Matter? That's exactly what Robert D'Agostino and his guests discuss every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. on Do Facts Matter. You'll get the real story here on americaswebradio.com.
You're listening to a special edition of the Terry Lakin Action Fund Radio Hour here on America's Web Radio. We appreciate you tuning in, and please tell your friends that it will be rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And now back to Marco. You all are just incredible. It's not enjoyable, but it's very, very interesting, and we're thankful that you're out, Dr. Lakin.
Well, thank you, and welcome back to the fourth segment. This thing we want to really deal with some of we're going to talk about what's going to happen going forward, because so a lot of you emailed questions in. We're just going to kind of summarize them. So, Terry, let's start with the question of what happens now in terms of the case and you're being discharged. How does that work?
Well, right now I'm on appellate leave, which means I'm still on active duty but not receiving pay, and just no duties other than preparing for possible appeals. And the appeal process can take up to 6 months to 18 months. The other option would be to waive the appeal process and receive my PD-214 or discharge papers, and I would be separated immediately from the military and go on with my life with no other ties with the military. When I get back to the family tomorrow, I want to spend some missed time with them, and after a little while, I do need to, or in the next few weeks, I need to look into reestablishing my medical license and seeking employment. I need to find a way to provide for my family, and then I want to continue on with some type of service to our country or to some faith-based organizations, and do what I can to still enjoy helping others. Certainly that's a driving desire in myself.
Right. So you're going to spend a couple weeks just kind of quietly, and since you're still technically not discharged, you're not free to do anything that you would have not been able to do as an officer, correct?
Correct.
So so those who have asked what Terry's position will be on the eligibility issue, currently it will be exactly what is currently stated on the site, and he took that action, and future actions would be pending his discharge or freedom to speak one way or the other. But as you can tell, he's still completely committed to the constitutional issues that drove him in the first place. So apart from you love medicine, you get back to medicine. Of course, you'd love to get back to the Army, but you can't do that right now. What are some other things you'd like to pursue vocationally? I think specifically having to do with the prison, correct?
Yes, I realize the population of our troops. I think we have wonderful soldiers that are deployed and carrying on the mission, but and we have our wounded warriors that we're trying to take care of, doing incredible things for them. But I think there's a population of valued soldiers that are incarcerated, and I think more needs to be done for them. I believe there's a lot of talent and training that could have more productive means of a more productive outcome from them rather than just incarceration.
So you'd like to get involved perhaps in programs that would assist the prisoners, pretty much like Prison Fellowship has done, but for the federal penitentiary.
Okay. Yes, I've read a little bit about what Charles Colson does, and that just sounds like incredible work. Needs to be done for our troops, I believe.
Now, you said, you told us earlier that over the last few months, the kids hadn't gotten on the phone much because they were very busy, but we saw on the Skype call today that, what did we see, that they were,
my youngest Jack was certainly wanted to just hog the camera, and he was trying to block out the faces of my daughter and son, and even putting his hand in front of his mom's face so he could be the only one seeing it.
He's a 3-year-old.
He is a 3-year-old. Yeah.
But probably even Peely would like to have acted like that, right? So what are you going to tell Peely when you see her tomorrow?
How much I love her, and I can't believe how much she's gone through by herself with this too. Incredible lady.
How about Holly?
Boy, want to hold her, and she's got so many talents and so driven herself with her musical and athletics that I just want to spend time with them and have a baseball game with my son Andrew tomorrow night. Really looking forward to seeing that.
And Jack, he's a real spunky little guy.
Jack's been trying to wrestle his older brother and been on the losing end, I think. But
he had a few stitches, I heard.
He did have a few stitches in his chin. Yeah, need to do a little wrestling with him and show him how to defend himself a little bit better or something. Or maybe not cause problems in the first place. Just wonderful to see their smiling faces on the video today. Talk to them.
And so tomorrow we fly back to Baltimore, and right now we have a little over 100 people coming to greet you, including a large Christian motorcycle group that wants to escort you out of the airport. It should be quite an event, and there's some people have come from great distances, including Oklahoma, New York, other places. Interesting.
Very, very touching and humbling, and just remarkable how uplifting and people can be with their thoughts. I truly appreciate it. Yeah.
So, Greg, give us your summary statement on your feelings about your brother right now, besides the fact that you're bigger than him.
The funny thing is, we're a family full of wrestlers, too, so even though we're middle-aged and things are starting to hurt, we are going to have it out in the yard like we do every time we've been apart for a while. But, no, I'm certainly good to see him again, and it's like he's returned from a deployment, but he's back and he's safe, and people that know him know that he's done this for the right reasons and for very principled reasons. And again, it's a different type of self-sacrifice. It's a different type of patriotism, but it's based on a love for his country, and it's based on what he believes in is right and wrong. And so, those people that know him or have met him know this also. So I'm not surprised that there's going to be a big following and a get-together. And I think he's deserving, but of course he's very humble, but it's good to have him back.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, and so a couple of just closing statements for those of you listening. As you could imagine, those of us who have worked on this from the beginning, including Margaret Hemingway, myself, and some of the other people, have gotten a steady stream of both positive and negative email. And those of you who may be listening who do not agree with Terry, he would love to hear thoughtful objections and observations, but not some of the really blatant rhetoric we've received. But that is greatly outweighed by the thousands of people, educated people, both current active military, retired military, lawyers, attorneys, doctors, citizens, who have come along in a thoughtful way to support Terry. And so we're simply asking if you feel that what he did was significant, that it was properly motivated to keep our Constitution pure and our country on the right track, please continue to support him at least through November. We will certainly communicate with you when he is employed. We don't want to receive any more funds than are necessary. We have been able to provide monthly expenses for Peely and some other expenses that have been incurred, and we really, really appreciate that. I wanted to close here with just asking you for a couple of your thoughts and what you'd like to say to the thousands of people who have visited the website, who have supported you financially, written you letters.
and the sacrifice from all our active duty members that deployed and non-deployed, and the incarcerated troops that are serving our country and doing their best out there. So my prayers go out to all of them and their families.
And some of the criticism was leveled against you in terms of not deploying, but people need to remember that you deployed how many times?
I had a deployment to Bosnia when we first went in, and a deployment with OEF 5 to Afghanistan for a year.
Honduras, Korea, always somewhere.
I enjoyed deployments. They were some of the best times of my life too, and sorry I didn't go on this one. I wished I could, or I wish I could go on in the future. But
well, you tried every other means possible.
Yeah.
Normal channels
and your bags were packed. We had a picture of that. You're ready to go. So Terry, you get to return to civilian life now. You're wearing regular clothes, not that mismatched prison uniform that you had so clean. And you got to eat a decent lunch today. Right?
Yes.
Happy about. And you have a king-size bed and lots of pillows, right?
Well, yeah, it's going to be a lot better than lying in a bunk where I roll one direction and may fall 5 feet to the concrete, or roll the other direction and I'm up against a cold concrete wall. It's a big improvement. Still in a little overload shock from it.
Well, you have some time to recover from that. Well, we certainly appreciate the ability, and there's so many people who have come alongside Terry. Besides the tens of thousands of website visitors and Facebook friends, there is a core staff in the Baltimore area that has just very diligently worked on Terry's behalf, as well as a number of other people on the web: Charles Kirshner, Mickey Booth, Sharon Rondeau, Margaret Hemingway, Brent Morehouse, and of course WorldNet Daily. So many organizations that have just very positively and continuously presented. We thank all of them for all they've done on Terry's behalf. So we're going to go quiet for a week or so here. You'll certainly be able to check the website for updates and the Facebook site. Let Terry recover. Keep him away from the spotlight until we kind of get a feel for how it's going to fall out. So we thank all of you for listening over the past few weeks. America's Web Radio will be rebroadcasting many of these shows, and you can download every one of them and listen to them. There's some really great pieces people did on Terry's behalf. So we thank you for this show this evening. Terry, welcome back to the land of the living.
Thank you, Marco.
Craig, thank you for all your help over the last few months.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to send it back to America's Web Radio, and a good evening, and God bless all.
This is americaswebradio.com, the best in chat radio designed just for you.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.